When World War II finally fell silent in 1945, the world stood in ruins. Cities lay flattened, empires crumbled, and the human spirit reeled from horror. Yet in the ashes of that devastation, a new race began, not for territory or power, but for knowledge. Both the United States and the Soviet Union knew that the next war would not be fought on the ground, but above it, in the skies, and soon, in space. Among the shattered remains of the Third Reich lay a trove of scientific brilliance, laboratories buried beneath mountains, experimental aircraft that defied physics, and rocket blueprints that hinted at the stars. Those secrets had nearly destroyed Europe. Now they could shape the world's future. As American and Soviet forces swept through Germany, each side moved with a hidden agenda. Beyond victory, they sought the minds that had created the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile. It had rained terror on London and Antwerp, a weapon born of desperation but guided by genius. Intelligence officers followed every whisper of a scientist, every abandoned laboratory. Code-named missions, overcast, lusty, and ultimately paperclip, were launched to find and secure the Reich's most valuable human assets before the Soviets did. In the confusion of surrender, hundreds of engineers, chemists, and physicians surrendered to the Allies. Some expected imprisonment. Instead, they were quietly offered contracts. The message was clear: your skills are too valuable to waste in a cell. Officially authorized in 1946 by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, Operation Paperclip was designed to recruit German scientists for U.S. military and research purposes. Its name came from the simple paperclip attached to each scientist's S-file, marking those chosen for relocation and clearance. Behind that bureaucratic symbol lay an uncomfortable truth. Many of these individuals had belonged to the Nazi Party. Some had supervised weapons testing that cost thousands of forced laborers their lives. Their credentials were extraordinary. Their pasts were often dark. Washington faced a moral dilemma. To outpace the Soviets in technology meant working with the very people the nation had just defeated. But with Cold War tensions rising by the day, morality gave way to necessity. Publicly, the U.S. was prosecuting Nazi war criminals at Nuremberg. Privately, it was sanitizing personnel records to clear scientists for entry. References to party membership or ethical violations were redacted, rewritten, or simply removed. In government archives, lines blurred between enemy and asset. The justification echoed through classified corridors. If we don't take them, the Soviets will. It wasn't paranoia. The Red Army had already captured much of Eastern Germany's rocket infrastructure and abducted entire research teams. The technological arms race had begun before the ink on Germany's surrender was dry. The first group of scientists arrived quietly in the United States in late 1945. They were housed at isolated military bases, cut off from the public eye. At Fort Bliss in Texas, and later at White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico, they began reconstructing and testing captured V-2 rockets under American supervision. These launches drew crowds of military brass, each test a thunderous step into the missile age. The engineers spoke little English and worked under guard, but their results spoke for them. The U.S. Army's rocketry program leapt forward years in mere months. America had turned its former enemy's weapons into the foundation of its defense and, unknowingly, the key to space exploration. By the early 1950s, U.S. military research transformed into a broader scientific endeavor. The world's superpowers were no longer simply racing to dominate the skies. They sought to reach orbit. The scientists brought under Paperclip designed missile guidance systems, supersonic aircraft, and long-range delivery systems. Their blueprints led to the Redstone rocket, the missile that would later launch America's first astronauts. The paradox grew clearer. The same minds that had engineered weapons of terror were now building tools of exploration. And as the Cold War deepened, patriotism and pragmatism became indistinguishable. Across the Iron Curtain, Soviet intelligence had carried out its own version of Paperclip. Captured German specialists were relocated to Moscow's outskirts, their work feeding into a parallel rocket empire. This mirrored pursuit of knowledge set the stage for one of history's most dramatic competitions, the space race. When the Soviets launched Sputnik in 1957, the shock was seismic. An object made by human hands was orbiting Earth, and it wasn't American. Congress demanded answers. Schools rewrote science curriculums overnight. The United States created NASA in 1958, merging military and civilian research in a single mission: catch up and surpass. Many of Paperclip's scientists transitioned quietly into NASA's structure. They brought experience, precision, and an unrelenting drive to achieve the impossible. A decade later, their rockets would carry the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions. From test stands in Huntsville to launch pads at Cape Kennedy, the thunder of those engines echoed the legacy of wartime Germany's research. It was a haunting symmetry. Technology once born in conflict, now pushing humanity toward peace, unity, and discovery. Yet beneath the celebration, unease lingered. Journalists and historians who unearthed the origins of those scientists faced a difficult truth. America's triumph in space owed something to moral compromise. The line between justice and progress had been redrawn in the smoke of history's aftermath. The story of Operation Paperclip isn't just one of science and ambition. It is a study of how nations rationalize the impossible when faced with fear of the other side. Was it right to protect brilliant minds whose past actions were ethically indefensible? Did progress justify forgiveness? Those questions remain unanswered, suspended in the orbit of human conscience. For every headline celebrating the moon landing, there existed a shadowed footnote: files stamped classified, testimonies withheld, names changed. Within the quiet of post-war laboratories, ideals collided with necessity. And in that collision, modern history was forged. Operation Paperclip officially ended in 1959, but its consequences echo through every satellite launch and planetary probe. The propulsion systems, guidance technology, and aerospace design principles, refined during those years, became the spine of America's space dominance. More importantly, Paperclip forced the world to confront a paradox that defines all scientific progress. Can knowledge be separated from the morality of its creation? Modern historians, ethicists, and technologists still wrestle with that question. The lesson endures. Innovation cannot be detached from conscience. Each breakthrough carries a responsibility as immense as the discovery itself. The story of Operation Paperclip is not one of villains turned heroes. It is the account of a world so desperate to avoid another war that it blurred the boundaries of right and wrong. It is about engineers whose equations transcended borders and governments that saw science as the ultimate weapon. From the ashes of one conflict arose a new battlefield of ideology and invention. Rockets that once delivered destruction now carry telescopes that gaze at distant galaxies. Yet the moral scars remain, hidden beneath the triumphs engraved in history books. As humanity continues its ascent into space, the legacy of Paperclip travels with it, a reminder that every leap forward demands a look back. In the end, the operation was more than a secret recruitment program. It was a mirror held up to civilization itself. The reflection it shows is brilliant, terrifying, and profoundly human.